March 15, 1943. The streets of Paris were quiet under the heavy hand of German occupation. Shops remained shuttered, and the hum of boots echoed along narrow cobbled lanes. Marie Dubois carried a satchel filled with coded messages bound for London. She believed that each transmission, sent under the shadow of death, could tip the balance in the war, shaping the lives of thousands she would never meet. Above an abandoned bakery, a small attic held her world. Wires snaked across wooden beams, a flickering lamp casting shadows along cracked plaster. Marie unpacked the radio equipment with care, her fingers trembling slightly. Each click, hiss, and static burst could mean either success or discovery. She believed that precision, vigilance, and courage were her only shields against the danger below. Outside, the city whispered secrets of occupation. Civilians moved cautiously, eyes darting to every corner. Every patrol, every shuttered window, represented potential death. Marie pressed her back to the wall, listening to the faint shuffle of boots on cobblestone. She believed her transmissions could save lives, guide operatives, and keep hope alive in Paris, even while the enemy watched from every darkened street. Hours stretched into night as she tapped the Morse key rhythmically. Each dot and dash carried critical intelligence, troop positions, supply schedules, and safe houses. She imagined Allied agents receiving her messages, acting on the information she risked her life to send. Marie believed that her work mattered beyond the attic walls, a lifeline connecting a city under siege to the forces fighting for freedom across the Channel. A sudden noise on the stairs froze her. Her heart leapt. Footsteps, deliberate and slow, descended toward the attic. Marie held her breath, pressing against the wall as shadows flickered across the floor. Then the sound faded. Slowly, she returned to the key. She believed that courage in the face of fear and persistence in secrecy could defy danger and protect the lives depending on her transmissions. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the attic for a moment. Marie shivered, but continued. Each transmission was a thread in a delicate web connecting Paris to London. She believed that one mistake could cost lives, yet one successful message could prevent disaster, guide missions, and sustain hope. She worked in near darkness, her every movement calculated, her resolve unwavering despite exhaustion. The static filled her headphones, a constant companion. Marie imagined messages crossing the Channel, decoded by Allied officers, shaping strategy far from the attic. Each signal was a prayer, a promise, and a defiance. She believed that her small acts could ripple outward, influencing events she might never witness, connecting courage to action in ways invisible yet vital. A distant shutter rattled, and she froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Patrols moved unpredictably, and one sound could expose her. Slowly, silence returned, and she exhaled. Fingers returned to the key, tapping with renewed focus. She believed that perseverance, precision, and bravery, even alone, could matter more than fear, that each message carried both hope and survival across dangerous streets. The night deepened. Paris seemed to hold its breath. Marie's fingers flew over the key, translating observations into coded dots and dashes. She believed that her transmissions could prevent ambushes, warn resistance cells, and guide Allied operations safely. Though exhausted, she felt the weight of her duty, knowing each message was a fragile lifeline threading across occupied France. Morning light crept through the attic window. Marie paused, letting her eyes adjust to the pale glow. The streets outside began to stir cautiously, aware of patrols but unaware of her work above them. She believed that her meticulous efforts could shift the course of events, that her courage, patience, and skill could matter beyond her attic, connecting lives in ways unseen but profoundly significant. A cup of tea warmed her hands briefly, the simple comfort grounding her in the endless tension. Each dot and dash she sent carried weight, representing strategy, survival, and hope. She imagined agents receiving her coded words, taking action to protect others. Marie believed that even small acts of defiance, executed with care, could reverberate across Paris, London, and beyond, shaping lives she might never meet. Footsteps echoed faintly from below. Marie pressed herself against the wall, waiting. The danger was constant, the threat unrelenting. Once the footsteps receded, she returned to her work. She believed that even in isolation, even under mortal threat, she could influence events, her small, careful acts weaving a web of resistance through a city dominated by fear. The hours stretched into dawn. Marie's body ached, eyes strained, yet she continued. Every transmission, every sequence of dots and dashes was crucial. She imagined the operators in London decoding her signals, altering plans, and taking steps that saved lives. She believed that perseverance in the face of fear could create real change, and that hope could survive even under the oppressive shadow of occupation. Outside, Paris began to stir more fully. Shops remained shuttered, patrols passed, and the city awoke under an unseen tension. Marie's mind flicked to the people she helped, the resistance fighters depending on the intelligence she transmitted. She believed that courage and secrecy, combined with diligence, could ripple far beyond the attic, saving lives and keeping the fragile hope of freedom alive in a city gripped by fear. Lightning flickered, thunder rumbled, and the attic shadows shifted. Marie's fingers tapped the key, sending signals across the channel. Each transmission felt like a lifeline, connecting Paris to London, secrecy to action, courage to survival. She believed that her vigilance mattered, that even alone she could influence events, protect lives, and contribute to a cause far larger than herself. Hours turned into morning. Marie paused briefly, listening to the faint hum of the city below. Every sound carried potential danger. Yet she continued, tapping sequences of dots and dashes, imagining her messages shaping missions far from her attic. She believed that her work could matter, that perseverance, courage, and care could defy fear, protect lives, and tip the balance in ways no one could see. The sky lightened, painting the attic walls with pale color. Marie's heart remained heavy with worry, yet resolute. Each message sent was a thread in a fragile web of hope. She imagined operatives receiving her words, taking action, and avoiding disaster. She believed that even in silence and shadow, acts of courage mattered, and that her work above the streets of occupied Paris could echo far beyond her small, hidden world. April 10th, 1943. The cold, grey waters of the English Channel stretched endlessly beneath a sky heavy with clouds. HMS Argus and its convoy of American and British ships moved cautiously, hulls slicing through swells. Radio operator Thomas Kane adjusted the dials, listening for any crackle that could hint at danger. He believed every signal he sent could save hundreds of lives, a fragile lifeline against the lurking menace of U-boats. Waves pounded the sides of the ship, and the spray soaked the deck. Men clung to rails and ropes, faces pale from seasickness and tension. The convoy had already lost 2 ships to Wolfpack attacks last month. Thomas adjusted the headphones, tapping out messages to nearby vessels, coordinating movements to avoid known submarine zones. He believed that each transmission could prevent another massacre, guiding ships safely through treacherous waters. The officer on deck peered through binoculars, scanning the horizon for the faint silhouette of an enemy submarine. Clouds merged with mist, hiding danger in plain sight. Thomas listened intently to static and clicks over the radio, translating signals into instructions for convoys ahead. He believed that every word, every carefully coded phrase could tip the balance, saving the men whose lives depended on vigilance and the unseen guidance of the signal. The night brought deeper shadows. Cold wind whipped across the decks, chilling the men to the bone. Thomas hunched over the radio, sweat mixing with sea spray on his forehead. Every transmission was an act of courage. Every message carried the lives of sailors and soldiers. He believed that precision mattered more than anything, that a misstep could lead to disaster, and that steadfastness in darkness could save the lives of hundreds. The sonar operator shouted suddenly, and the crew stiffened. A blip on the screen, a possible U-boat, passed across the sonar. Depth charges were prepared. Thomas's fingers flew over the key, sending signals to nearby ships to alter course. He believed in the connection between his tiny radio station and the larger battle, that his vigilance could prevent a catastrophe and guide convoys safely past the silent hunters beneath the waves. Hours dragged on in freezing darkness. The roar of waves, the clang of metal, and the occasional alarm filled the air. Men whispered prayers, clutched rosaries, or stared blankly at the grey horizon. Thomas typed furiously, translating intelligence into signals that could direct evasive maneuvers. He believed that hope and determination could endure even here, amidst fear, salt, and steel, that his hands alone could shape the lives of many unseen men. A sudden explosion rocked the water nearby. A ship in the convoy had been hit, the hull splitting with a terrifying groan. Smoke and spray erupted, and shouts rang out. Thomas tapped even faster, sending coordinates and warnings to the rest of the convoy. He believed that his messages could save others, that the wolves beneath the waves could be outmaneuvered, and that courage, vigilance, and skill could still prevail in this deadly dance. The wounded were brought on deck, faces pale, limbs trembling. Medics moved quickly, shouting instructions. Thomas watched silently, fingers never stopping. He believed that even small actions, transmitted through dots and dashes, could mean life or death. The radio was his weapon, precision his shield, and his belief in its importance kept him steady amidst chaos and the unrelenting rhythm of the sea. Morning broke in pale light. The convoy continued, battered but still moving. The horizon remained grey, waves threatening but manageable. Thomas leaned back briefly, rubbing his eyes. He believed that survival was possible, that the signals sent through the night had guided his comrades past danger, and that even amidst fear, determination, skill, and faith could shape the fate of men hundreds of miles from home. Throughout the day, the convoy maintained formation. Each ship kept a vigilant eye, sonar scanning constantly, lookouts watching for periscopes or torpedoes. Thomas tapped out messages at intervals, sharing sightings, coordinating maneuvers, and confirming positions. He believed in the chain of communication, that each signal strengthened the convoy's chance of survival, that connection and precision were the only shields against the hidden, underwater threat. The afternoon brought a fog bank, thick and suffocating, reducing visibility to mere meters. Ships slowed, alarms on high alert. Thomas's eyes darted between screens and dials, translating radio signals from distant vessels. He believed that clarity of mind and careful attention could cut through the fog, that vigilance and steadfastness could navigate them through danger, and that even in the grey haze, hope could persist. The sea was merciless. Waves slashed across decks. Drenched men shivered in soaked uniforms. A U-boat attack was possible at any moment. Thomas continued tapping messages, each signal a thread in the fabric of survival. He believed that his steadfast work, though invisible, could guide convoys past destruction, that his courage and focus were vital, and that lives depended on each calculated keystroke he transmitted. By evening, the convoy had navigated past the most dangerous sectors. Ships had taken minor hits, some crew injured, but the fleet remained mostly intact. Thomas allowed himself a short breath, heart racing from the near misses. He believed in the power of human skill and coordination, that every message sent through the dark, stormy night had contributed to survival, and that hope remained a guiding force amidst fear and relentless danger. The sun set slowly over a still grey sea, casting long shadows across steel decks. Sailors huddled for warmth, exhausted but alive. Thomas continued transmitting updates to London, his hands stiff but precise. He believed that each dot and dash, each signal sent through radio waves, had saved lives, and that courage, precision, and vigilance could endure, shaping destiny even in the chaos of the Atlantic. May 5, 1944. Dawn broke over the English Channel, painting the waves in pale grey and silver. The convoy, battered but steadfast, approached the staging area near the Normandy coast. Ships creaked and groaned as waves pushed against their hulls. Thomas Kane, now exhausted from nearly a month at sea, tapped out final transmissions with trembling fingers, believing every signal could guide men safely to shore. The horizon held faint silhouettes of landing craft and supply vessels awaiting orders. Thomas's eyes flicked between his radio screens and the swells outside. Every ship in the convoy depended on precise timing, coordination, and intelligence. He believed that his work could prevent chaos, that each transmission could be the difference between life and death for hundreds of soldiers who would soon disembark into the unknown. Below deck, sailors secured cargo, checked weapons, and readied landing gear. The smell of diesel, oil, and salt filled every compartment. Thomas moved quickly between stations, ensuring communications were clear, signals accurate. He believed that even in these final hours, precision mattered more than ever, that the invisible web of radio signals could protect his comrades and guide them to a safe landing. The wind rose suddenly, whipping spray across decks and soaking uniforms. Waves pounded relentlessly, but the convoy held formation. Thomas's fingers ached from constant transmission, but he did not stop. Each dot and dash was a lifeline, each message a prayer. He believed that courage, focus, and vigilance could endure the storm, and that men depended on his calm in the midst of chaos. A lookout shouted from the bridge. A periscope? A shadow beneath the waves? The crew tensed, eyes scanning the dark swells. Thomas tapped urgently into the radio, sending warnings, coordinating evasive maneuvers, and relaying coordinates. He believed that his signals could outpace the enemy, guide ships safely past threats, and save lives in a battle that would soon extend far beyond the horizon. The sun climbed higher, cutting through the lingering fog. Landing craft in the distance waited silently, decks lined with men and equipment. Thomas breathed slowly, remembering messages sent for weeks, intelligence on U-boat positions, convoy instructions, weather updates. He believed that his months of vigilance had prepared this moment, that skill, courage, and persistence could shape outcomes far beyond the reach of a single man. Storm clouds gathered again as the convoy approached the staging waters. Men shivered, soaked through, eyes alert. Thomas continued transmitting, translating intelligence into commands that would guide ships to the proper positions. He believed in the power of communication, that radio waves could protect men facing the unknown, that his determination could influence survival even in the face of relentless uncertainty. Explosions rang out suddenly. A distant U-boat attack nearby sent water and smoke into the air. Crew members scrambled to man weapons, fire flares, and sound alarms. Thomas's hands moved with urgency, sending precise instructions to avoid the torpedoes. He believed that every signal mattered, that vigilance and skill could avert disaster, and that courage could endure even when steel and water threatened to consume all. The convoy pressed forward, the coastline drawing nearer with every passing hour. Waves continued to batter hulls, but formation held. Thomas's mind raced through signals, maps, and coordinates, ensuring each ship was aligned for the final approach. He believed that focus and precision could defy the chaos, that the hundreds of men relying on his messages would reach the shore alive, and that months of preparation had led to this critical moment. By mid-afternoon, the staging area was in sight. Anchored landing craft, supply ships, and waiting troops. Thomas allowed himself a brief glance at the horizon, imagining men readying for the assault that would change the war. He believed that the radio signals he had sent, the warnings he had relayed, and the coordination he had maintained had helped preserve lives, guiding men through danger toward a moment of destiny. A storm rose suddenly, dark clouds rolling in from the northwest. Waves crashed over the sides, soaking decks and rattling equipment. Thomas continued his transmissions, unwavering despite exhaustion and cold. He believed that even in these final hours, vigilance, skill, and courage mattered, that the unseen threads of communication could influence outcomes, and that his dedication could shape the survival of hundreds. The convoy edged closer to the embarkation points. Men prepared landing gear, checked weapons, and secured supplies. Thomas tapped signals tirelessly, coordinating with nearby vessels to ensure alignment, timing, and safety. He believed that every message mattered, that his steadfast work could prevent missteps, and that courage, precision, and connection could carry men through the final hours before action. Shadows stretched across the water as evening approached. The channel grew restless, waves tossing smaller ships. Thomas's fingers flew across the key, relaying coordinates, warning of hazards, and confirming positions. He believed that every decision, every transmission could save lives, and that the quiet heroism of vigilance and accuracy was as essential as courage on the battlefield. June 5th, 1944. Darkness blanketed the Normandy coastline. The convoy, battle-worn but steadfast, floated silently on restless waves. Soldiers huddled on deck, gear secured, weapons ready. Thomas Kane adjusted the radio one final time, sending critical coordinates to command. He believed that each transmission could prevent disaster, guide men safely, and shape the success of the invasion that would decide the war. The air smelled of salt, oil, and anticipation. Waves lashed the sides of ships, and men tightened straps across chests and shoulders. Officers moved through the ranks, issuing last instructions. Thomas tapped out messages at a furious pace, coordinating positions, timing, and signaling hazards. He believed that even in this final night, precision, vigilance, and courage could avert catastrophe and guide the soldiers to safety. Landing craft awaited their orders. Men checked weapons, secured packs, and whispered silent prayers. The roar of the channel filled the ears, the occasional splash or creak a reminder of the danger surrounding them. Thomas listened intently, hands flying over the key. He believed that each dot and dash sent through radio waves carried hope, warning, and life itself, that hundreds depended on his concentration in the darkness. The sky remained heavy with clouds. A faint glow of dawn was hours away, and the waves showed no mercy. Boats rocked violently, metal groaning with tension. Thomas's voice remained calm over the radio, steadying crews with transmitted instructions. He believed that steadfastness, clarity, and careful coordination could overcome fear, that invisible threads of communication could guide men to the shores awaiting them. A lookout shouted, signaling a distant shadow beneath the waves, an enemy submarine, possibly a final threat before the assault. Depth charges were prepped, crew braced. Thomas transmitted warnings with urgent precision, his mind racing through charts, previous attacks, and convoy positions. He believed that even a single accurate message could save dozens of lives, that vigilance and courage could steer them through the final moments of peril. Men murmured prayers and exchanged brief nods, faces pale in the faint light. Soldiers imagined their families far away, letters written, promises left unsent. Thomas tapped steadily, eyes scanning dials, relaying messages to every ship. He believed that hope, perseverance, and unbroken attention could endure the tension of the night, that his unseen work could secure their passage into history and across the channel. The convoy edged closer to landing points. Officers signaled final positions. Soldiers adjusted packs, checked weapons, and gripped rifles with white-knuckled hands. Thomas's radio emitted soft clicks and hisses as he relayed intelligence, guided formations, and confirmed coordinates. He believed that accuracy, calm, and courage could make the difference, that survival, planning, and precision were intertwined in these final hours. The horizon darkened as waves swelled higher. Boats creaked, splashed, and rocked violently. Soldiers whispered encouragement, offered brief smiles, and exchanged quiet gestures of solidarity. Thomas continued sending instructions, coordinating movements, and warning of potential hazards. He believed that every message mattered, that his work linked hundreds of lives to safety, and that diligence and bravery could influence destiny in ways unseen. Midnight passed slowly. The wind howled, salt spray stung faces, and the channel tested resolve. Thomas's body ached from hours at the radio, eyes strained, hands numb. Yet he believed that his vigilance could prevent disaster, that the coordination he maintained would carry men to shore safely, and that courage, skill, and unbroken attention were as vital as any weapon in the fight to come. As dawn approached, the first faint glow touched the waves. Soldiers tensed, bracing for the landing. Thomas sent the final transmissions confirming positions, warning of hazards, and coordinating timing with assault craft. He believed that these last messages, sent through storm and darkness, could save countless lives, preserve order, and ensure that the invasion could begin as planned. The channel seemed endless, yet landing craft lined up along the horizon, waiting for the order to storm the beaches. Soldiers gripped rifles, hearts pounding, breaths shallow. Thomas's voice and radio signals guided them, a silent hand ensuring cohesion and safety. He believed that courage, precision, and communication could carry men into the unknown, that hope could be transmitted across steel, water, and fear. Sunlight broke slowly over the channel. Waves reflected pale gold, illuminating anxious faces. Thomas continued transmitting, final coordinates aligning with assault plans. Soldiers exchanged tense nods, murmuring prayers and farewells. He believed that his months of vigilance had prepared them, that every transmission could mean the difference between life and death, and that the convoy's success rested on both courage and careful coordination. The first boats received orders, engines thrumming beneath the decks. Men adjusted helmets, checked weapons, and gripped packs. Thomas tapped last messages, guiding each vessel to its position, ensuring that timing and formation were flawless. He believed that his work, though unseen, was crucial, that precision, perseverance, and bravery could protect lives and set the stage for the turning point of the war. The sun rose fully, casting light over the Normandy coastline. Soldiers in the first landing craft braced, waves slapping steel hulls, hearts pounding. Thomas leaned back briefly, watching the horizon, believing that his work had mattered, that the signals sent through darkness and danger had preserved lives, and that courage, hope, and determination would carry men into the history they were about to make. The convoy had crossed, the landing began, and the first step toward liberation of Europe was underway. Thomas's hands finally stilled, but his heart raced with the knowledge that lives were in motion, guided by every precise transmission. He believed, without question, that bravery, vigilance, and careful preparation had made history possible, and that the echoes of these moments would endure forever in memory.